Experts on both sides of the ocean are talking about what they expect from the U.S.-China strategic and economic dialogue. I spoke with two members of the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, President Richard Vuylsteke and Vice Chairman Walter Diaz, and I asked them how the recent tensions between the U.S. and China are affecting businesses.
The national champion kind of orientation of China for Chinese companies, and how welcome are foreign companies to be not only...
Are you referring to the American businesses who recently just were outspoken about concerns about protectionism?
Yeah, but I think, you know, that we've seen a trend a long time to keep sort of parameters on how successful you could be in China. The question is, are those parameters even shrinking going forward? The jury's out on that still, but that question is being asked more frequently about industrial policy and so forth, and also with service industries. Another area that I think has got me worried from the long term is more national security law related with the reviewing of NGO policy in China. You know, when I was doing this business of China watching 30 and 40 years ago, the amount of interactions between China and the United States were very, very minimal. But what we've seen over the last decade or two is a huge growth of people-to-people relations, of institution-to-institution relationships that has benefited China and the United States relations with untold success in environmental issues and social, I mean, across the board, education and so forth. Now there's a sense that this is being put at risk, and we may tear that fabric of very strong people-to-people and institution-to-institution relationships between the two countries. I think that it's not going to go that far, but right now, heading up to the S&ED and this year's discussions, I think there's going to be a lot of worry expressed about this. Things are still in a draft, as you know, and it's still in a draft format, but I think good heads on both sides of people in the China-U.S. relationship are going to see that years and decades spent to build these kinds of connections are not going to be, not to be severed.
Do companies, whether you're Chinese or American, have they expressed the concerns about protectionism or concerns about this relationship to you, and what are they hoping the solution might look like?
Well, I think it's any white paper out of Beijing or discussions from U.S.-China Business Council, U.S. Chamber, always has a full litany of concerns sector by sector. I think, you know, national policy, obviously you want to build your own companies and make strong and so forth, but our argument is, and it's directly in line with Chinese policy, is there's a push for Chinese companies to be global players, to be genuine multinational brands. And I think our view is pretty consistent, that if you want to build global brands, you want to compete internationally, you got to compete domestically.
There's been a lot of discussion about rules, and Mr. Diaz, I'll get to you on this. Some companies say that the rules should be more consistent. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you can elaborate if you feel like the rules are applied evenly on both sides, whether you're a Chinese company in the U.S. or a U.S. company working in China.
Well, kind of touching upon what Richard said, I think a good example of policy that was successful in making companies competitive on a world standard is the aviation business. You know, back in 2004, the Chinese government decided to work to liberalize the aviation treaty with the USA, and directly, less than a year later, we did see a big improvement in the product offered by Chinese airlines to the USA, an increase in frequency, and definitely moving up the world-class standards to be able to offer, you know, front cabin, nice product to corporate customers. And so it's actually been very successful for the Chinese side to be able to push that liberalization and allow competition to occur, and it's definitely improved their ability to compete not only now domestically or to the USA, but you also see them expanding to Europe and other places around the world because of that. And I think, you know, from an aviation perspective anyway, it's been clearly a level playing field so far, and hopefully both governments will continue to push hard to keep it in or maintain that type of environment.
Let me ask you guys this. what would you consider a successful strategic and economic dialogue? What would they have to do to say, hey, that's a great job, that's a success?
First of all, I think the S&ED this year is going to be a precursor to the President Xi's visit. So to have great expectations for things to come out of this dialogue would be setting the bar too high, and we create disappointments that would be unnecessary. You know, we saw a great agreement last time on climate change when the presidents met. I think reinforcement of that on the positive is going to be very important. Some of the things that Walter alluded to in certain sectors, or macroeconomic discussions on how to get certain sectors to be, you know, competitive within China and also globally, and interact on best practices and so forth. You know, the groundwork for that is going to be useful. On the economic side, on the strategic side, you know, there's always these concerns about Iran and so forth. The South China Sea will come up. There are some strong disagreements on what's happening there. I think we're going to see a broad range of discussion topics, not a whole lot of depth probably, because you don't want to steal the fire from the President Xi's visit.